Chapter 2645. Lan Jingquang was in a terrible fix recently. No matter how hard Yu Xiqing tried to detoxify Lan Qingyan's condition did not improve. As Yu Xiqing spent more time, the suspicions of the Lan clan towards Yu Xiqing deepened. No matter what, Yu Xiqing was known as the #1 in the art of medicine and poison. Who would have thought that she would not be able to detoxify Lan Qingyan after spending 3 months? The Yu clan was already in decline. After this situation, the people of Blue Sun City looked down on the Yu clan even more. 3 months were almost up. The divine pond of ice and snow was about to open. However, Lan Qingyan's condition did not improve. They would have to give up this golden opportunity. Thinking of this, Lan Jingquang felt an inexplicable sense of irritation. He had carefully planned for so many years. He did not expect that it would be ruined because of a battle for supremacy. Once Lan Qingyan missed this opportunity, it would be difficult for the other disciples of the Lan clan to catch up even if Lan Qingyan survived the divine pond of ice and snow. In other words, their original power could be said to be gone forever. One careless move, and the whole game was lost. After knowing that Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching had come to Blue Sun City, Lan Jingquang's eyes lit up. He quickly sent people to find Bailey Hongzhuang. Yu Xiqing spent so much time, and still could not detoxify it. Obviously, there was no way to successfully detoxify it. Since this poison was administered by Bailey Hongzhuang must have a way to detoxify it. Previously, Bailey Hongzhuang was in Limitless Palace. Even if they wanted to ask for it, they would not be able to get a good result. However, now that Bailey Hongzhuang was in their Lan clan sphere of influence, this situation would be much easier to solve. If Bailey Hongzhuang was not willing to give up the antidote, then their Lan clan could only use violence. No matter what, he could not let his years of planning go to waste. Immediately go to the clan and invite Bailey Hongzhuang to the clan. Lan Jingquang's eyes flashed with malice. He was filled with disgust and hatred towards this Bailey Hongzhuang, whom he had never met before. If it weren't for Bailey Hongzhuang, he wouldn't have been in such a terrible state for the past 3 months. Other than when Lan Yunxiao was with him, he hadn't felt this feeling for many years. Yes, when the Lan family's second elder and the others found out that Bailey Hongzhuang had arrived in Blue Sun City, smiles appeared on their faces. No matter what, at least Lan Qingyan had persevered until now. As long as the antidote arrived, Lan Qingyan would be able to recover quickly. After all, the Lan family also had a lot of natural treasures. As long as Lan Qingyan could participate in the divine pond of ice and snow this time, then all of these effects would not matter. Even though the Lan family had many outstanding disciples, as long as Lan Qingyan did not die, she would still be the most outstanding person. No one could compare to her. However, just as Lan Jingquang was sending people to invite Bailey Hongzhuang, news suddenly came from Yu Xiqing's residence. Master Quang, Great Master Yu Xiqing just sent news. She has successfully detoxified the poison in Lan Qingyan's body. Now Lan Qingyan's injuries have already begun to recover. Hearing this news, Lan Jingquang was slightly stunned. Then a trace of ecstasy appeared in his eyes. Is this true? Chapter 2646. Previously, when they knew that Lan Qingyan had lost an arm, the Lan family had already prepared the medicinal herbs for her. However, later on, the situation was not suitable for treatment, and this matter had been delayed. However, the medicinal herbs had always been placed in Yu Xiqing's residence. Once Yu Xiqing successfully detoxified the poison, she would immediately treat Lan Qingyan. Lan Jingquang instantly heaved a sigh of relief. Originally, he was worried that using forceful means on Bailey Hongzhuang might cause some trouble. However, compared to the greater loss, this was already the best method. He did not expect that Yu Xiqing would be able to detoxify Lan Qingyan at this crucial moment. This really solved a huge problem for him. It seemed that the heavens did not want him to die. Although the process of these 3 months was very torturous, as long as Lan Qingyan could recover, then all the problems could be easily solved. Thinking of the vexation he had suffered in these 3 months, Lan Jingquang's gaze became increasingly gloomy and cold. After Lan Qingyan had truly recovered, He would let those disloyal people taste the consequences of betrayal. Come, let's go and take a look. Lan Jingquang immediately stood up and walked towards Yu Xiqing's residence. The second elder and the others were also overjoyed. Their original nervousness and worry had already disappeared, and it was replaced by a kind of pleasure of taking revenge. After nearly 3 months of torture, Lan Qingyan's entire body was on the verge of death. She felt that she was not far from death. However, when she woke up from her coma today, she suddenly felt that the pain that accompanied her for nearly 3 months had suddenly disappeared. This feeling was too nostalgic, and she even suspected that she was hallucinating. However, after she told Yu Xiqing about her feelings, Yu Xiqing took her pulse and told her that the poison in her body had been completely removed. Hearing Yu Xiqing's words, Lan Qingyan only felt that it was inconceivable. She was almost certain that she was going to die. She did not expect that there would be a sudden turn of events. However, the feeling in her body was indeed there. She asked Yu Xiqing many times, and Yu Xiqing gave her such a definite answer. She suddenly felt as if she had risen from hell to heaven. In reality, it was not only Lan Qingyan who had this feeling. Yu Xiqing also had the same feeling. During this period of time, as she was at her wit's end, she could feel that the Lan family's attitude towards her was getting colder and colder. It was obvious that they no longer took her seriously. She, who had always been looked up to by others, could not stand being looked down upon by others. However, the poison was too strong, and she could not break it no matter how hard she tried. However, what she didn't expect was that Lan Qingyan's poison would suddenly disappear today. It had completely disappeared. After discovering this, Yu Xiqing immediately realized that this was an opportunity. Under such torment, Lan Qingyan was already muddle-headed. She had no idea what was going on. She would take all the credit for this, and no one would know. Once she spread the news of the antidote, she would become a hero of the Lan family. As a result, the Lan clan no longer dared to look down on him. On the contrary, she would become an honored guest of the Lan family and Lan Qingyan's savior. Lan Qingyan was the young mistress of the Lan family. With such an identity, she did not need to worry about the following situation. Chapter 2647. When Lan Jingquang arrived, he saw that Lan Qingyan's pale face had recovered a bit, and her spirit was much better. Seeing this, Lan Jingquang's eyes couldn't help but be filled with joy. "Qingyan, how do you feel?" Lan Qingyan's mood was naturally very good. This feeling of living from the brink of death was difficult to move. Her face revealed a joyful smile. "Father, I'm very good. Thanks to Grandaunt for saving me." Although she didn't know much about medicine, the pain in her body had indeed disappeared. After recovering from the pain that was enough to torture a person to death, Lan Qingyan only felt that every minute and every second was exceptionally comfortable. Lan Jingquang's face was full of smiles. He then turned to look at Yu Xiqing. "Aunt, it's been hard on you. Thank you for saving Qingyan's life." These days, because Yu Xiqing hadn't made any progress in curing Lan Qingyan's poison, Lan Jingquang couldn't help but have some opinions in his heart. Originally, Lan Jingquang had always been very respectful towards Yu Xiqing. However, after the incident in the Yu clan, Lan Jingquang's thoughts had changed. After all, Yu Xiqing had always been known as the #1 in medicine and poison for so many years. He didn't expect that when the Yu clan was in trouble, Yu Xiqing would be helpless. It was as if she was useless in an instant. Lan Qingyan had been poisoned for so long. Yu Xiqing had always been thinking of ways to cure the poison, but there was no progress. This made him wonder if Yu Xiqing's previous reputation was just flattery. Otherwise, the other party just casually poisoned her, and it was already difficult for Yu Xiqing to be in such a difficult situation. When he thought of all the requests that Yu Xiqing made of him, the dissatisfaction in his heart became even stronger. Fortunately, after so long, he finally succeeded in curing the poison. Looking at Lan Jingquang's face full of smiles, Yu Xiqing couldn't help but feel a trace of disdain and disgust. These days, she saw the change in Lan Jingquang's attitude towards her. If she didn't say that she cured Lan Qingyan's poison, she was afraid that in the following days, she really wouldn't have any status in the Lan clan. Fortunately, there was always a way out. Although she didn't know why Lan Qingyan's poison dissipated, as long as it dissipated, it was enough. You're too polite. Curing Qingyan's poison is my duty, Yu Xiqing said with a smile. Her sincere appearance did not reveal the disgust in her heart. Aunt, I'll have to trouble you to help Qingyan recover as soon as possible. The Ice Snow Divine Altar is about to open. Yu Xiqing nodded and said, Don't worry, leave this matter to me. With so many heavenly treasures, it's very easy to let Qingyan recover as soon as possible. After receiving Yu Xiqing's confirmation, Lan Jingquang let out a sigh of relief. He felt like he could finally put down the stone that had been weighing on his heart for so many days. Next, he would be able to answer to the elders. As for those who had become disloyal during these days, he could start dealing with them. Lan Qingyan's face was full of smiles, but the ruthlessness in her eyes became more intense. The reason why he had suffered so much was all because of that bitch, Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 2648. After the Battle of Zhuolu, she already hated Bailey Hongzhuang to the extreme. She didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would almost take her life. This time, Bailey Hongzhuang was here. She must make sure that Bailey Hongzhuang would never return. The news of Lan Qingyan's detoxification quickly spread throughout the Lan family. This news was no different from a heavy bomb, shocking everyone in the Lan family. In fact, the poison in Lan Qingyan's body had not been detoxified for so long. Almost everyone was certain that Lan Qingyan would die without a doubt. Many of the younger disciples of the Lan family even wondered if the opportunity to enter the divine ice pond would fall on them. Unexpectedly, just a few days before the divine ice pond opened, Lan Qingyan was detoxified. For a moment, Lan Jingquang's people were extremely happy, while the other group was deeply worried. Once Lan Qingyan's injuries were healed, the situation would return to how it was before. Winner takes all. They could almost imagine the outcome. The Lan family's patriarch, Lan Hongtai, also knew of this news. He didn't feel much about it, because his heart was now on Bailey Hongzhuang, who had already arrived in Blue Sun City. He wanted to see Bailey Hongzhuang with his own eyes. However, the current situation between the Lan family and Bailey Hongzhuang was very sensitive. One must know that the reason why Lan Qingyan was in such a situation was all because of Bailey Hongzhuang. He didn't intend to alert the enemy. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang entered the Lan family, then he would definitely have the opportunity to see her. Mo Yunjue was indeed a genius. When learning the art of disguise, he could be said to be able to grasp it with just a little bit. After Bailey Hongzhuang taught Mo Yunjue some of the key techniques, Mo Yunjue was able to master it very quickly. At this moment, a series of knocks sounded outside the house. Following that, a man in a black robe walked into the house. He looked as if he had something to report to Mo Yunjue. Mo Yunjue nodded slightly and gave a look, indicating that he didn't need to care about Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching. Only then did the man slowly speak. Young master, the Lan family just released news that Yu Xiqing has successfully detoxified Lan Qingyan. When this news came out, Mo Yunjue couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. The situation was really as Bailey Hongzhuang said. Lan Qingyan's poisons was detoxified today. But this should be the detoxification was done by Yu Xiqing. Got it. You can leave now. Report back if you have any news. Mo Yunjue waved his hand, and the man in black walked out of the house. Bewitching's lips curled into a slight smile, and his expression was somewhat mocking. Looks like this Yu Xiqing is also at her wit's end. In order to improve her situation, she actually took all the credit for herself. I'm afraid that Lan Jingquang and the rest are now endlessly grateful to Yu Xiqing. If they know that all this wasn't Yu Xiqing's doing, their expressions. I'm really looking forward to it. Mo Yunjue chuckled. Yu Xiqing thought that no one else would know about this, but as the instigators, they couldn't be clearer about this matter. Yu Xiqing hasn't been able to detoxify my poison for so long. I'm afraid that her situation in the Lan family isn't very good. For her to do this now, although it's somewhat shameless, it's understandable. Chapter 2649. Yu Xiqing would never have imagined that she would fall into such a situation one day. However, this was nothing now. Once Yu Xiqing finds out who she really was, she would feel even worse. There's no hurry. The truth will not be buried just like that. Let Yu Xiqing be smug for now. The corners of Di Beichen's lips curled upwards, and there was a hint of ridicule in his smile. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other. The situation would only get more and more interesting. At night, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were cultivating in their room, when two figures suddenly appeared soundlessly in front of them. Bailey Hongzhuang and Mu Qinghan immediately withdrew from their cultivation and looked at the two exceptionally familiar figures in front of them. Joyful smiles appeared on their faces. Grandfather, grandmother. Bailey Hongzhuang rose to her feet. Ever since she had left Sun Moon Palace, she had not seen Si Tuyen and Mu Jin's. Now that she had seen the two of them again, she could not help but feel excited. She had heard from her parents that the relationship between Si Tuyen and Mu Jin's had been mended a lot. Although there were still some affectionate feelings, it was only a matter of time. Master, mistress. Di Beichen bowed respectfully, and a joyful smile appeared on his incomparably handsome face. Ever since his master had found his mistress, he had completely become a hands-off shopkeeper, and no longer paid any attention to the matters of Tiangang sect. However, now that he had seen his master and mistress together, he was genuinely happy. He had lived with his master since he was a child, and understood his master's situation very well. After so many years, he had never seen his master in such high spirits. This feeling was as if he had found his life's goal. In the past, he had never seen his master so happy. Perhaps from the day his master had found his mistress, he had finally begun to live the life he truly wanted. Si Tuyen and Mu Jin's sized up the talented and beautiful couple Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang before them. Their eyes flickered with relief and kindness. Looks like you've improved a lot during this period of time. With Si Tuyen's cultivation, he could naturally see the current strength of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen at a glance. Compared to before they had participated in the Battle of Zhuolu, their strength had increased tremendously. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen smiled. The Battle of Zhuolu was truly a good place, especially the Primal Chaos Tablet. It helped them raise their cultivation by quite a bit. If they hadn't participated in the Battle of Zhuolu, there would still be a large gap between them. I've already heard about the Battle of Zhuolu. To be able to achieve such good results, Yixuan, were really overjoyed. Mu Jinsei's face was filled with joy and excitement. When she had found out about Bailey Hongzhuang's achievements, she had felt an indescribable sense of pride. This feeling made her happier than when she had achieved good results. Grandma, I was just lucky. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Speaking of her experience in the Battle of Zhuolu, no one knew whether it was good luck or bad luck. If they hadn't been unlucky enough to walk on the most difficult path, then she wouldn't have been so lucky to obtain such a huge increase in strength. It could only be said that everything was predestined. Chapter 2650. Bailey Hongzhuang was still young, but she was able to reach this step with her own ability. Just this point alone made her stronger than everyone present. At least, Mu Jin's was ashamed of her inferiority. Beichen, you have to work harder. Hongzhuang is getting more and more powerful now. Si Tuyen patted Di Beichen's shoulder with an extremely kind expression. He had watched Di Beichen grow up since he was a child, so he knew his character very well. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were together, there was still a big gap between them. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had obtained the Rainbow Pearl, her talent had been completely revealed, and the gap between the two was gradually shrinking. If Di Beichen didn't work harder, and Bailey Hongzhuang caught up to him in the future, then the situation would be different. Of course, in Si Tian's opinion, there was nothing wrong with living off a woman. Di Beichen nodded and said with a smile, Master, I will work hard. Looking at Di Beichen's appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle. Today was the second time someone had said such words to Di Beichen. It seemed that the increase in her strength was really a bit dangerous for Di Beichen. However, she also knew in her heart that this was because Di Beichen's physique hadn't changed yet. Once Di Beichen's physique changed, then his cultivation speed would greatly increase. After they settled the Lan family's matter, they would put all their focus on changing Di Beichen's physique. Otherwise, if they continued to delay like this, It wouldn't be good for Bewitching's body. During this period of time, the situation had gradually begun to appear, but Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills were able to successfully suppress it, so there weren't any problems now. Yixuan, I heard that Lan Qingyan's poison has been cured. Once you don't have this weakness, I'm afraid that when you go to the Lan family, they will start to question you. What do you plan to do next? Mu Jinsei looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with concern. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang had recognized her, Bailey Hongzhuang's actions had never made them worry. However, this time, Bailey Hongzhuang had poisoned Lan Qingyan so viciously. Once Lan Qingyan recovered, she would definitely not let this matter rest. If they directly fell out with the Lan family, it would be fine. But according to their understanding, Bailey Hongzhuang planned to enter the Divine Ice Lake first. If that was the case, the situation would be a little troublesome. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly, with confidence and indifference between her eyebrows. Now that I'm the Sun Moon Palace's young palace master, I believe that the Lan family won't dare to do anything to me. The Battle of Zhuelu has never prohibited the use of poison. What's more, I only poisoned Lan Qingyan and took her life. If the Lan family were to kill me because of this, it would be too much. Bailey Hongzhuang was the head of an aristocratic family in her previous life, so she was very clear about some of the things that aristocratic families paid attention to. No matter what, this participation in the Divine Ice Lake was a promise that the Lan family had previously made. If the Lan family didn't fulfill this promise, it would be a huge blow to the Lan family's reputation. Originally, the Battle of Zhuelu this time had already weakened the Lan family's reputation. If this unfavorable news were to spread, then the Lan family's influence would be even worse. Chapter 2651. They were the ones who suggested the divine pond of ice and snow as a reward. They won't slap their own face on this point. Even if they want to settle the score, they'll have to wait until we leave the divine pond of ice and snow. However, once we leave the divine pond of ice and snow, there's no need to continue hiding. Bewitching quickly said. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching's words, Si Tuyen and Mu Jinsei looked at each other. It seemed that these two brats had already calculated everything. It's better to be safe than sorry. Si Tuyan's voice deepened. Lan Jingquang isn't a soft-hearted person. This time he's in a terrible fix. I'm afraid he won't let you off so easily. Now, whether it was Si Tuyen or Mu Jinsei, they were both on guard against the Lan and Yu clans. This was because, from the things that had happened these past few years, they clearly knew that both the Lan and Yu clans were not good people. Grandfather and grandmother are already here, aren't they? With you here, we don't have to be afraid of anything. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was full of smiles. The Yu clan was no longer the same as before. To let the Lan clan offend Tiangang's sect and Sun Moon Palace, they probably didn't have the guts to do so. However, once Mu Jinsei appeared, Yu Xiqing would probably be completely dumbfounded. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's cute and playful appearance, Mu Jinsei couldn't help but reach out and pat Bailey Hongzhuang's head. You little brat, you've really calculated everything. That's natural. If I didn't have a foolproof plan, I wouldn't have dared to set foot here. If she hadn't prepared everything, how would she have dared to set foot in this place that meant so much to her? This was the place she had secretly decided to come to when she found out about her past. Back then, she had suffered great humiliation here. Now that she was here again, she definitely wouldn't allow anything unexpected to happen here. What she wanted was to stand in front of the Lan clan in a completely domineering manner. She wanted to let everyone in the Lan clan know how foolish their decision was back then. Even if she lost the Rainbow God Pearl, she still couldn't be compared to trash like Lan Qingyan. Similarly, her father was not someone a despicable person like Lan Jingquang could compare to. As for her mother, she wasn't someone that a vicious and merciless woman like Yu Manlan could compare to. In the end, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others came to an agreement. First, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching would head to the Lan family. Mu Jins and Si Tian would keep an eye on the Lan family's situation. If anything went wrong, they would immediately appear. In this way, this was already a foolproof plan, and there was no need to worry about any other risks. Even if it was only Si Tuyen and Mu Jinsei who came alone, and did not bring anyone from their forces, there was still no need to worry. Grandmother, this time when I went to the Yu clan, I specially prepared a gift for you. Her beautiful eyes, which were as black as ink, flickered with a dazzling light. She believed that her grandfather and grandmother were still unaware of this. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Mu Jin stared blankly for a moment before asking, "What gift?" Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Yu Xiqing had used such a vicious poison on you, causing you to suffer for so many years. This time, I've improved the poison and used it on Yu Xiqing's body. Chapter 2652. As Yu Xiqing's old friends, they understood her cautiousness very well. It was extremely difficult for an ordinary person to even get close to Yu Xiqing, not to mention poisoning her without anyone noticing. They had been in Blue Sun City for a while, and had a certain understanding of the Lan and Yu family. After knowing that the Yu family had suffered such a huge blow because of Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching's actions, the two of them couldn't help but gasp in surprise. However, they had never heard of the news of Yu Xiqing being poisoned. On the contrary, there had been rumors of Yu Xiqing helping Lan Qingyan to cure her poison. If Yu Xiqing had really been poisoned, she shouldn't be so relaxed right now, and still have the leisure to help others cure their poison. However, they naturally wouldn't doubt Bailey Hongzhuang's words. It seemed that there were still many things that they weren't clear about. Hongzhuang, how did you poison Yu Xiqing? Didn't she notice? Si Tuyen felt that it was a little inconceivable. Yu Xiqing was a vicious and merciless woman, so she was extremely guarded against others. All these years, in order to find out about Mu Jin's whereabouts, he had tried to threaten Yu Xiqing. However, this woman had always taken all the unfavorable factors into account, leaving him helpless. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was actually able to poison Yu Xiqing successfully. From the looks of it, Yu Xiqing hadn't noticed until now. This wasn't an ordinary feat. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head and sighed. Poisoning Yu Xiqing was indeed an extremely difficult task. As her direct disciple, I had stayed by her side for a whole month before I found a chance to poison her. However, this goo poison isn't like ordinary poisons and needs a certain amount of time to take effect. This is the only way to bury the goo poison deeper. Judging from the current situation, it won't be long before the poison flares up. After knowing that Bailey Hongzhuang had become Yu Xiqing's direct disciple, Si Tuyen and Mu Jin's couldn't help but be stunned. Previously, they had only roughly understood that the Yu family had fallen into such a situation. However, they didn't understand the process at all. They didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang had actually become Yu Xiqing's direct disciple. This was really out of their expectations. It seemed that when Bailey Hongzhuang had gone to the Yu family, the things that had happened weren't ordinary. If Yu Xiqing knew that her direct disciple had poisoned her, who knew what kind of expression she would have? Yixuan, is the goo poison you gave Yu Xiqing the same as the goo poison I was inflicted with before? Mu Jin's couldn't help but ask. When she thought about how this parasite had tortured her for so many years, she felt her hair stand on end. The effects of the goo poison were too terrifying. She had been tortured for years to the point that she almost wanted to end her own life. Fortunately, she had persevered. Yixuan Xiaixuan, Yixuan and then Yixuan. The goo worm is still the same one as before, but I added a little something. Chapter 2653. The effect of this goo poison is very similar to the one from back then, but it's much more powerful. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black eyes flashed with a bright luster. Since she wanted to return everything to Yu Xiqing, it was naturally impossible for it to be the same as back then. She had to make Yu Xiqing suffer more. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Mu Jin's and Si Tuyen glanced at each other. Their granddaughter was really not an ordinary kind of person. If Yu Xiqing knew about this, she would definitely regret everything she had done. I'll wait and see. Mu Jin smiled. Mu Jin's did not have the slightest bit of sympathy for someone like Mu Jin's who had done many evil deeds. Once Yu Xiqing fell into her hands, she would definitely let her have a good taste of what was called pain. However, her granddaughter's methods were obviously more than hers. Giving her a taste of her own medicine was the best. In the next 2 days, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest lived peacefully in Blue Sun City. However, they were still keenly aware that many people from the Lan family were watching their every move. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two generously let the other party see. At least before entering the Divine Ice Snow Pond, they did not have any plans. As for Si Tuyen and Mu Jin's, they had already completely disappeared from everyone's sight. With their strength, as long as they wanted to hide, the Lan family would not be able to discover them. Ever since Lan Qingyan had been cured of the poison, her original arrogance had returned. During this period, although she had been lying in bed, she still understood what had happened from the mouths of Yu Manlan and the rest. In the past, she did not know that so many people wanted her to fall, so that they could obtain her resources. This point caused Lan Qingyan's heart to be filled with intense anger. These bastards! She must quickly recover, and not let them have the chance to take advantage of her. After this period of experience, Lan Qingyan felt that she had grown again. In the past, her life had been smooth sailing, and she had not experienced any great storms. She thought that everything was so easy. However, after Lan Jingquang taught her a lesson, she realized that things were not as simple as they seemed. The reason why her life had been so smooth all these years was because Lan Jingquang had been helping her with everything. Lan Qingyan felt that she was not ruthless enough in the past. If she was ruthless enough, like her father, once she made a move, she would not have fallen into such a situation. This time, after entering the divine pond of ice and snow, she would first take Bailey Hongzhuang's life. Then, she would make those fellows in the family unable to have any other thoughts. The future head of the Lan family could only be her. When Lan Jingquang saw the change in Lan Qingyan's attitude, his face revealed a joyful smile. Fortunately, this daughter of his, Lan Qingyan, was not as useless as Yu Manlan. In fact, she was more like him. As long as Lan Qingyan pulled herself together, the Lan family would definitely be theirs. Father, that Bailey Hongzhuang is very strange. She is extremely strong when it comes to fighting above her level. It had been 3 months since the Battle of Zhuolu had ended. He wondered if she had improved in the past 3 months. Chapter 2654. Lan Qingyan looked at Lan Jingquang in front of her. Her beautiful eyes were filled with worry and viciousness. She wanted to personally deal with Bailey Hongzhuang, but she had to admit that Bailey Hongzhuang's talent in cultivation wasn't bad. Thinking back to when her cultivation was 3 levels higher than Bailey Hongzhuang was only at a disadvantage, but she wasn't completely powerless. With the help of the Primal Chaos Tablet, Bailey Hongzhuang's strength increased by leaps and bounds. On the other hand, she was tricked by Bailey Hongzhuang, causing her to not make any progress in the past 3 months. With her current situation, once she met Bailey Hongzhuang, she would still lack confidence. Thus, she could only place her hopes on Lan Jingquang. The Lan family had stood tall in the Shengxian continent for so many years, so they must have some methods to increase their strength. She had heard of it before, but it was extremely precious, and only the most important people in the family could have it. Although she didn't know what it was, she knew that it must be a treasure. If she could obtain this inheritance, she would be full of confidence when she faced Bailey Hongzhuang. Hearing Lan Qingyan's words, Lan Jingquang's thin lips slightly pursed. His gloomy and handsome face revealed a complex and obscure expression. Seeing Lan Jingquang like this, Lan Qingyan's heart also felt a little apprehensive. Regarding her father's personality, she hadn't been able to figure it out for so many years. Almost every time she saw Lan Jingquang reveal such an expression, her heart couldn't help but feel apprehensive. Lan Jingquang kept staring at Lan Qingyan. After a while, he slowly opened his mouth. The family does have a secret technique that can help you increase your cultivation, but the pain you have to endure is not small. Usually, only the head of the family has the opportunity to accept it. Although you are now the future head of the family, you are still not. Hearing this, Lan Qingyan couldn't help but frown. Her hands under her sleeves gradually clenched into fists. Although her right hand had recovered, she still remembered the pain of losing her arm clearly. The last time she saw Bailey Hongzhuang, she was a complete loser. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had arrived at Blue Sun City, she must have been constantly mocking her. She absolutely couldn't bear to see Bailey Hongzhuang again as a loser. Moreover, Bewitching would also come this time. The Lan family was her home ground. How could she lose to an outsider? Father, I will be the head of the Lan family sooner or later. This matter, you should have a way, right? Lan Qingyan abruptly raised her head. Her eyes flickered with a resolute bloodthirsty light. This time, she absolutely cannot fail. No matter what, she must obtain this inheritance. Looking at Lan Qingyan's determined look, Lan Jingquang's eyes couldn't help but flash a trace of astonishment. In all these years, he had never seen Lan Qingyan with such a resolute appearance. After this incident, after this Qingyan's lands with her, he admired this ambition very much. Just like him, as long as he had his eyes on something, he must obtain it no matter what method he had to use. Now he was somewhat grateful to Bailey Hongzhuang. If it wasn't for her, he didn't know when Lan Qingyan would be able to understand everything. Since this is something you must obtain, as your father, I will naturally do my best to help you obtain it. Chapter 2655. That old man Lan Hongtai had been trying to control him all these years, thinking that it would be fine as long as he didn't hand over the family head position. However, Lan Jingquang's life wasn't something that old man Lan Hongtai could control. As long as the family head position fell on Lan Qingyan. So what if he wasn't the family head in name? In the entire Lan family, who would dare to disobey him? Now, he wanted to put all his heart on Lan Qingyan and help her become the family head in one fell swoop. After receiving Lan Jingquang's answer, Lan Qingyan's face also revealed an excited and proud smile. Thank you, father. Lan Jingquang patted Lan Qingyan's shoulder. Don't worry, I will handle this matter. However, the pain of accepting the secret method is equally unbearable. If you can't bear it, then not only will you fail at the last step, your cultivation will also be weakened. You have to think about this carefully. Father, I have confidence. In these 3 months, I have been suffering a pain worse than death. I think the pain of the secret method won't be worse than what I had to endure before. Speaking of which, I really have to thank Bailey Hongzhuang for all of this. Lan Qingyan's eyes rippled with a trace of mockery and ridicule, but she still gritted her teeth and said these words. Although the pain had been relieved, the impression was still too deep. It was to the extent that she would often think of it in her dreams at night, waking her up with a start. Lan Jingquang saw a deep hatred in Lan Qingyan's eyes. It was just like him more than 20 years ago, so familiar and so ambitious. Since you are so confident, then I can rest assured. Wait here for my news. I will be there as soon as possible. Lan Jingquang looked at Lan Qingyan with a face full of smiles. After saying this, he strode out of Lan Qingyan's room. The divine ice snow pond would open in 2 days. They must hurry up. If they were a step slower, it would all be too late. However, after Lan Jingquang left, Lan Qingyan stared blankly at Lan Jingquang's departing figure. Her eyes were filled with disbelief, wondering if she had seen wrongly. After so many years, this was the first time she saw a ray of affection in Lan Jingquang's eyes. However, she clearly remembered that gaze just now. She couldn't have been wrong. After a momentary daze, Lan Qingyan's lips suddenly bloomed into a smile. She suddenly understood why her father didn't like her mother enough all these years, just like how he didn't like her always complaining to her mother. This was the real reason. Night fell and a cool breeze blew. Bailey Hongzhuang, Bewitching, and Mo Yunjue gathered together once again. Now that the Lan family had completely treated them as a group, there was no need for them to hide. I just received a piece of news. Mo Yunjue took a sip of tea and said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching's gazes fell on Mo Yunjue. The Shirtian Pavilion's ability was indeed well-deserved. Their informants were spread all over the Shengxian continent. Even though they were being watched closely by the Lan family, Mo Yunjue's news had never been cut off. If he offended such an enemy, it would be impossible to guard against. Lan Qingyan seems to have some sort of operation tonight. Lan Jingquang, Lan Kaiqing, and the others all went to her residence. Chapter 2656. You don't know what's going on? Bewitching raised his eyebrows. Lan Qingyan's sudden movement, when the divine pond of ice and snow was about to open, was obviously not a good thing. Mo Yunjue shook his head. This matter was originally carried out behind the Lan clan's back. It's already good that I know about this. As for what's going on, other than Lan Jingquang's core members, I'm afraid no one else knows about it. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching both fell into silence. They were going to the Lan clan tomorrow, but Lan Qingyan suddenly made a move tonight. No matter how they looked at it, it didn't seem like she came with good intentions. However, they didn't know what kind of tricks Lan Qingyan would play. We and Lan Qingyan are rivals. It's expected that she would try all sorts of methods to deal with us. According to my guess, Lan Qingyan might want to take advantage of tonight to increase her cultivation. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips slightly curved. That elegant and refined face didn't reveal any worry. On the contrary, it was still indifferent and relaxed. With the experience of her previous life, she had some understanding of the methods that aristocratic families had. These methods were even inferior to those of 1,000 years ago. Forcefully increasing one's cultivation was also a method that aristocratic families would use at certain times. However, each family's method was different. The effects and side effects were also different. Although she wasn't sure if her guess was correct, but at this time, this was the most likely possibility. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Bewitching and Mo Yunjue couldn't help but look at each other. Their expressions were somewhat complicated. If that's really the case, then the Lan clan has really put in a lot of effort this time. Mo Yunjue's eyes suddenly darkened. He had heard of this kind of method to suddenly increase one's cultivation. However, the side effects were usually very big, so it wasn't used lightly. However, Lan Qingyan was the future head of the Lan clan. Naturally, the Lan clan wouldn't ruin Lan Qingyan's future because of her personal feelings. Therefore, there was only one possibility. The side effects were very small. This kind of secret technique was usually extremely precious and could not be used easily. The Lan family must have paid a huge price for it. Lan Qingyan is the young lord of the Lan family. It is not strange that the Lan family is willing to pay the price for her. Bewitching's deep, dark eyes were clouded with haze. Originally, all this situation was within their expectations. They didn't expect such a thing to happen now. That could be a little complicated. Of course, how much Lan Qingyan's strength had increased was not what he cared about the most. What he cared more about was that everything Lan Qingyan was using now should belong to Bailey Hongzhuang. Compared to the gloomy expressions of Mo Yunjue and Bewitching, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Lan Qingyan is now desperate. It seems that she also sees me as a very strong opponent. In order to defeat me, she has already used everything she has. Compared to the situation where Lan Qingyan had always looked down on her, Bailey Hongzhuang felt that she was more willing to see Lan Qingyan's current expression as if she was facing a great enemy. Even if Lan Qingyan used everything she had and used all the resources she could, in the end, she was still defeated by her. That kind of blow was the biggest and most difficult to bear. Chapter 2657. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two walked to the front of the Lan family's gate. The Lan family obviously knew that they were coming. Therefore, Great Elder Lan Borong was already waiting for them. When Lan Borong saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two, a joyful smile appeared on his face. Young Palace Master Bailey, young Sect Master D, young Tower Master Mo, welcome. When they saw Lan Borong again, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two were not unfamiliar with him. As the Great Elder of the Lan family, Lan Borong usually handled many of the Lan family's matters. Moreover, they had seen Lan Borong with their own eyes during the Battle of Zhuulu last time. Elder Lan, Bailey Hongzhuang, and the other two smiled. When Lan Borong saw Bailey Hongzhuang's familiar face, his eyes could not help but fluctuate a little. It had to be said that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two looked too similar. At this moment, when he looked carefully, it was as if the two of them had merged together. Although there were some fluctuations in his heart, Lan Borong did not show it. He smiled and said, "The three of you, please follow me. We have already arranged accommodations for the three of you, and prepared a banquet to welcome the three of you." Although Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two were young, their identities could not be ignored. Tiangang Sect, Shitian Tower, and Wuji Palace. Once these three major forces joined forces, the entire Xingxian continent would tremble a little. Therefore, Lan Borong was very polite and did not dare to treat Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two as his juniors. Thank you, thank you. Lan Borong led Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two slowly to their accommodation. Along the way, he also introduced the environment and situation of the Lan family. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at every corner of the Lan family. It was so unfamiliar. In the past, her parents lived here. Originally, this should be an environment that she was very familiar with. However, in fact, she only felt an indescribable strangeness to this place. While they were walking, the disciples of the Lan family were also curiously sizing up Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two. So this girl is Bailey Hongzhuang. She looks even younger than Lan Qingyan. I didn't expect her to be able to defeat Lan Qingyan. This is too unbelievable. Don't belittle yourself. If it weren't for Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue's help, Bailey Hongzhuang definitely wouldn't be a match for our young master. That's right. Bailey Hongzhuang poisoned and asked for help. She's just a vixen. In terms of strength, our young master is miles ahead of her. In front of the clan, even if there were some who were dissatisfied with Bailey Hongzhuang, at this moment, all of that had dissipated. All that was left was the thick enmity towards Bailey Hongzhuang. Fortunately, Great Master Yu Siqing successfully cured the young master of the poison. Otherwise, Bailey Hongzhuang would really be showing off her strength. I didn't expect her to have a heart as venomous as a scorpion, with such a pretty face. The disciples of the Lan family obviously hated Bailey Hongzhuang to the extreme. At this moment, they didn't cover up their discussion at all, and Bailey Hongzhuang heard it clearly. In fact, no one in the entire Lan family welcomed Bailey Hongzhuang's arrival. The news of Lan Qingyan being poisoned couldn't be concealed at all. Therefore, during this period of time, the power of the Lan family was also affected. After all, losing a young master was a huge loss. Wife. Chapter 2658. Bailey Hongzhuang met Di Beichen's deep eyes that were filled with concern. The corner of her lips curled up slightly, and her faint smile revealed indifference and peace. She shook her head without a trace, indicating that she was fine. This scene was within her expectations. Just like the resentment and indifference of the Lan family towards her, she similarly had no other feelings towards the Lan family. This was the place where her father grew up, but it was also the place where she almost lost her life. In her heart, perhaps even a foreign place could not be compared to it. Di Beichen's eyes revealed a hint of darkness. His displeased and cold gaze swept across the surroundings, and a ruthless and bone-chilling intent was instantly emitted. Looking at Di Beichen's gaze, the surrounding Lan family disciples, who were originally aggressive, only felt a chill run down their spines. It was as if they had fallen into an ice cellar, and even the words that were about to leave their mouth were forcefully suppressed. They no longer had the courage to speak. When they looked at Di Beichen again, there was a hint of fear in their hearts. Previously, they did not take it seriously. Now that they saw Di Beichen's aura, they understood that the young lord of Tiangang sect was not someone to be trifled with. One look was enough to make people feel as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. This was the difference between them. Naturally, Lan Borong also noticed this scene, and he could not help but feel a little emotional. As the young lord of Tiangang sect, Di Beichen had already made a name for himself a few years ago. Among the younger generation, Di Beichen was definitely one of the most dazzling people. Lan Qingyan's reputation, among the aristocratic families, was just like Di Beichen's reputation among the sections. Not to mention her strength, Di Beichen's temperament was still better. Most importantly, Di Beichen was really protective of Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang had yet to make a move, but Di Beichen had already made his move. It seemed that the rumors were true. Di Beichen's heart was on Bailey Hongzhuang. Under Lan Borong's lead, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two arrived at their residence. The three of them were the distinguished guests of the Lan family. Naturally, their residence was arranged to be extremely comfortable and luxurious. On one hand, It showed the importance of the Lan family to them. On the other hand, it also showed the Lan family's background. You all can rest here for now. I will send someone to invite you over for lunch. By then, the young lord and the elders of the Lan family will be present. Lan Borong's face had a faint smile, as he introduced to Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two. After hearing this, Lan Borong's departure, with Lan Qingyan's head. After Lanz's of, Lan with two of them with him of us. S is right. S's is the, S's rights. Of this of. Mo Yunjue narrowed his long, narrow eyes. His lips curled into a faint smile, and a cold glint blossomed from the depths of his eyes. Logically speaking, with the status of the three of them, everyone should have come out to welcome them when they came to the Lan clan today. However, only Lan Borong came. This was undoubtedly a loss of face for them, as if they were insignificant people. On the other hand, the Lan family's disciples' attitude was probably incited by someone. Otherwise, a few disciples of the Lan family wouldn't have dared to say such things so brazenly. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes darkened. Lan Qingyan had suffered so much previously. This time, she must be thinking of how to teach me a lesson. The cold reception in the morning was nothing, but I'm afraid this lunches will not be easy. Chapter 2659. Hongzhuang, if you speak like this, you're treating me like an outsider. Perhaps Lan Qingyan will take this cold reception seriously, but it doesn't affect me at all. Mo Yunjue's long eyebrows slanted. His handsome face was full of indifference. If he really cared about this extravagance and false reputation, then as the young lord of Shirtian Pavilion, he would have appeared in front of everyone long ago. On the contrary, he always felt that this kind of extravagance was very troublesome. Just like this morning, it was more comfortable. Isn't this kind of trick a little petty? If Lan Qingyan is really the next head of the Lan family, then it won't be far from decline. Bewitching's eyes were as sharp as an eagle's, flashing with light. His deep and magnetic voice was full of ridicule and ridicule. Did she think that this kind of cold reception would be enough to make them nervous? If Lan Qingyan wasn't childish enough, how could she have such a performance in the Battle of Zhuelu? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were as cold as ice. Before she met Lan Qingyan, she had only heard of Lan Qingyan's reputation, and always regarded Lan Qingyan as a difficult enemy to deal with. However, after she crossed swords with Lan Qingyan, she understood that Lan Qingyan was only a proud daughter of heaven, who was well protected by the family. She was fundamentally different from her, who climbed up from the bottom. The proud daughter of heaven of an aristocratic family was revered since young. No matter what she wanted, she didn't need to pay any price. On the contrary, they often had to pay a huge price, or even their lives to get what they wanted. Therefore, from the beginning they were different. Forget it. Let's wait for this feast of treachery to begin. Thinking about it, it's really interesting. Bewitching's lips curled into an evil smile, revealing arrogance and haughtiness. This good show was waiting for them to take the stage. Mo Yunjue glanced at Bewitching indifferently. If it's really a feast of treachery, once a big fight breaks out, you better be prepared. This time, he was prepared to fight at the slightest disagreement. Although it wasn't easy for the three of them to break out of the encirclement in this huge Lan family, at least their destructive power wasn't small. Hearing this, Bewitching chuckled. Don't worry, I'm more prepared than you. Same here. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the two people in front of her, who suddenly became very tacit. Her beautiful eyes revealed a bit of surprise, but more than that, there was joy. There was clearly a battle waiting for them to fight, but they didn't feel nervous at all. At lunchtime, just as Lan Borong had said, someone came to lead them there. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two arrived, they saw that the entire hall was already filled with people, but the atmosphere was somewhat unusual. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately saw Lan Qingyan sitting at the top. Compared to 3 months ago, Lan Qingyan had lost a lot of weight. It was obvious that she had been tortured. However, his complexion was quite good. Although it was only a short 2 days, with Yu Xiqing's help, her recovery was excellent. Even so, Bailey Hongzhuang could still see that Lan Qingyan inadvertently revealed a bit of weakness and exhaustion. It seemed that everything was as they had expected. Lan Qingyan had used up a lot of energy last night, so today's appearance was like this. Chapter 2660. Lan Qingyan naturally saw Bailey Hongzhuang as well. She saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was similarly dressed in white, floating like dust. Her unparalleled features were cold and distant, just like an immortal from beyond the heavens. Her pitch-black eyes instantly filled with gloominess. That hatred and disgust could not be concealed. Similarly, there was also a thick sense of jealousy that could not be concealed. She had always liked white dresses, because white dresses could set off her extraordinary temperament. However, at this moment Bailey Hongzhuang, who was wearing a white dress, actually had a feeling that she was inferior to her. This was the difference between a mortal and an immortal. It was only a simple white dress, yet Bailey Hongzhuang could actually give off such a feeling. Lan Qingyan herself also felt that it was somewhat inconceivable. The Lan family elders had long imprinted Bailey Hongzhuang's name deeply in their hearts, but they had never seen her with their own eyes. However, when Lan Jingquang, Yu Xiqing, and the Lan family elders saw Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance, almost everyone's movements paused for a moment. Everyone's gaze was fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang. Even the outstanding Bewitching and Mo Yunjue at the side did not have the heart to pay attention to her. That was because that peerlessly beautiful face was so familiar to him. It was so familiar that it made their hair stand on end. Second elder Lan Kaiqing stared at Bailey Hongzhuang in a daze. The wine cup in his hand could not help but fall to the ground, emitting a crisp sound. However, Lan Kaiqing was completely unaware. His gaze seemed to have grown roots, and he could not recover from his shock for a long time. 19 years ago, that graceful and outstanding figure was the hope of everyone in the Lan family. He was extraordinarily handsome. Every movement of his carried the power to convince people. He was always like the wind, carrying a kind of otherworldly temperament that made people feel comforted. Even though 19 years had passed, that shimmering elegance was still engraved in everyone's hearts and could not be erased. However, he had already disappeared for 19 years. Back then, he had fought a bloody battle, and in the end, he had left with hatred. Even now, they still couldn't forget his resolute appearance. For 19 years, they never heard from that man again. They understood that that person would probably never forgive them. However, as the elders of the family, it was not that they did not feel pained, but they could only think from the perspective of the family. In terms of debt, all the elders of the Lan family felt indebted to Lan Yunxiao. This debt could only be repaid after they went to the underworld. However, this peerless beauty in front of her was extremely similar to Lan Yunxiao and his wife. Lan Jingquang's originally cold expression couldn't help but widen his eyes when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang. He could no longer maintain his previous indifference and calmness. How could this be? These words kept appearing in Lan Jingquang's mind. This was impossible. It was impossible for that child to have survived. But why did this Bailey Hongzhuang look so much like Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing? Was there really such a coincidence in this world? Lan Qingyan suddenly realized that everyone around her had a shocked expression. She couldn't help but frown. What was wrong with everyone? Even if Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance was outstanding, everyone shouldn't have such an expression, right? Chapter 2661. Bailey Hongzhuang enjoyed the shocked gazes of the Lan family. Facing her familiar face, the Lan family would probably recall everything that happened back then. That's right. She's back. The baby girl who was abandoned by all of them and almost lost her life had returned with a heart full of anger and the determination to take revenge. Bewitching and Mo Yunjue quietly looked at each other. It seemed that they didn't need to say anything. The Lan family's shock was enough to explain everything. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to hide her identity, it would be very difficult. Because of her appearance, there were many things that didn't need to be proven. When Lan Borong saw the Lan family's expressions, he sighed in his heart. 3 months ago, when he first saw Bailey Hongzhuang, his expression wasn't much better than everyone's now. And this further proved that he wasn't the only one who felt the resemblance. As Lan Qingyan's savior, Yu Siqing also came to today's banquet. The moment she saw Bailey Hongzhuang, Yu Siqing had a bad premonition. Out of everyone present, she was the most familiar with Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's appearance. Because these past few years, the two of them had always been in her dungeon, so she often saw them. The face in front of her not only resembled Mu Lingbing, but also Mu Jin's. Almost at the first sight, Yu Siqing was certain that this so-called Bailey Hongzhuang was Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's daughter. It was impossible for such a coincidence to exist in this world. All coincidences could be deliberate. Cough. When Lan Borong saw everyone staring blankly at Bailey Hongzhuang, he couldn't help but cough lightly, forcing everyone to return to their senses. Hearing this voice, Lan Jingquang and the others recovered from their thoughts and smiled again. However, this smile was still somewhat stiff and unnatural. Welcome to the Lan family. Your presence brings light to our humble dwelling. Lan Jingquang was the first to stand up. His handsome face revealed a trace of gentleness, like a poisonous snake. Although his attack didn't seem strong, it could kill in one strike. Master Quang, you're being too courteous. It's also our fortune to be able to come to the Lan clan to broaden our horizons. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two smiled, but this smile did not reach their eyes. Both sides were just flattering each other on the surface and feigning civility. Naturally, they were not stingy with their superficial pleasantries. The three of you please take a seat. Today's dishes are all the specialties of our Blue Sun City. I hope the three of you won't mind. Master Quang is too humble. I've long heard that Blue Sun City's dishes are top-notch. Today, I'm fortunate enough to taste them. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two slowly sat down. However, Lan Kaiqing and the others were still immersed in their own thoughts. Their previous thoughts had already been thrown to the back of their minds. All they wanted to know was whether or not Bailey Hongzhuang and Lan Yunxiao had a relationship. If they weren't related, it would be too similar. However, if they were related, could it be that the young empress of Limitless Palace was Lan Yixuan? Young Empress Bailey, you must properly taste our Lan family's specialties. I specially ordered people to prepare these to welcome you. Lan Qingyan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a face full of smiles. However, her words had a hidden meaning. This luncheon was not for Bailey Hongzhuang to enjoy. Chapter 2662. Seeing Lan Qingyan's smile that hid a knife, Bailey Hongzhuang sneered in her heart. Compared to the big gift she had prepared, Lan Qingyan's Hongmen banquet was just a small scene. Come, let us all toast to the three heroes and welcome you. Lan Borong raised his wine cup and suggested. Hearing this, everyone in the Lan family raised their wine cups and welcomed the arrival of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two with smiles on their faces. If it wasn't for the fact that both sides were well aware of the situation, others would have thought that this was a harmonious scene. Between the cups, Lan Jingquang probed. Young Palace Master Bailey's age seems to be much younger than I expected. You should be younger than my Qingyan, right? Hearing Lan Jingquang's words, Di Beichen and the other two were well aware of the situation. It seemed that Lan Jingquang couldn't hold back his thoughts and wanted to quickly verify everything. And when Lan Jingquang asked this question, Lan Borong and the other Lan family elders couldn't help but reveal a concerned expression. They also wanted to know Bailey Hongzhuang's age. Even if they were certain that Lan Yixuan couldn't have survived, the appearance in front of them was too similar. They couldn't help but have a misconception. Perhaps everything wasn't as bad as they thought. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. Her charming face was full of confidence, but she pretended not to understand. Oh? How old is Miss Lan? I'm 22 this year. Lan Qingyan's voice was cold, her stomach full of emotions. Until now, she still didn't know what was going on. Why did everyone act so strangely when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang today? She couldn't be more familiar with her father's temper. With the other party's age, Lan Jingquang wouldn't care about this kind of thing. But now Lan Jingquang was acting out of character and suddenly asked about this. It was unavoidably strange. Then she is indeed older than me. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Hearing her words, Lan Jingquang's eyes couldn't help but change a bit. He even wanted to ask if Bailey Hongzhuang was 19 years old, but asking that would be too obvious. When Lan Qingyan found out that Bailey Hongzhuang was younger than her, she revealed an unhappy expression. Wasn't this another way to prove that her talent in cultivation was not as good as Bailey Hongzhuang's? After Lan Jingquang asked this question, he didn't ask anything else. He needed to think about this matter at length. Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance was too sudden. He had no idea at all. It was a little too hasty for him to make such a judgment in such a short time. The most important thing was, besides the fact that Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance was shockingly similar to Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's, she couldn't connect them at all. However, regardless of whether Bailey Hongzhuang was related to Lan Yunxiao or not, they were enemies. Lan Jingquang loathed Bailey Hongzhuang. Now that he saw Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance, he loathed her even more, because this face would remind him of everything he didn't want to remember. In reality, this face had already evoked the memories of all the elders, including his disgraceful actions. Young Sect Master D, I heard that you and young Palace Master Bailey are close? Lan Borong asked with a smile. Chapter 2663. Following Lan Borong's words, Lan Qingyan's eyes flashed with a hint of jealousy. She, Lan Qingyan, had never liked anyone in all these years except for Di Beichen. Unfortunately, the person Di Beichen liked was her nemesis. Di Beichen's handsome face broke into a warm smile. He nodded. It's not far. After dealing with the Lan clan's matters, it would be time for their wedding. As soon as these words were spoken, Lan Jingquang and the other elders of the Lan family felt their hearts skip a beat. Once Tiangang sect and Limitless Palace joined forces, their influence would be unimaginable. As the Lan clan's young lord, Lan Qingyan and Bailey Hongzhuang had already formed a grudge. The better Bailey Hongzhuang's development, the more disadvantageous it would be for them. Lan Qingyan and Lan Jingquang looked at each other quietly. Lan Qingyan had told Lan Jingquang all her thoughts yesterday. She wanted Bailey Hongzhuang to die, and to destroy the marriage between Limitless Palace and Tiangang sect. She must become Di Beichen's wife. Even if she didn't use the means, she only cared about the results. Lan Jingquang didn't think there was anything wrong with this. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang died, Lan Qingyan's qualifications and Di Beichen's were not bad. Young Palace Master Bailey, we can understand the small fights between young people. However, you actually poisoned Qingyan. Isn't this a bit too much? Lan Jingquang said lightly, but his eyes quietly became sharp. This luncheon wasn't meant to welcome Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two, but to denounce them for their crimes. As soon as he finished speaking, the atmosphere in the hall froze. Bailey Hongzhuang sneered in her heart. It seemed that the main event was about to begin. This poison not only almost took our young lord's life, but it also tortured our young lord for so long. Lan Kaiqing followed up with a smile on his face, but there was a hint of viciousness in it. Even if there was a grudge between us during the Battle of Zhuolu, young Palace Master Bailey's actions are a little too ruthless. If he wanted to kill someone, he could just use poison. Bailey Hongzhuang's poison was not only to take Lan Qingyan's life, but also to torture her before she died. This kind of method was really ruthless to the extreme. The elders of the Lan family put down their wine glasses and stared at Bailey Hongzhuang with burning eyes. From their aggressive looks, it was clear that they would not rest until Bailey Hongzhuang gave a reasonable explanation. Master Kuang, are you bringing up old scores with me? Bailey Hongzhuang said with a faint smile as her ink-black phoenix eyes were filled with coldness. I only want to seek justice for my daughter. Young Palace Master Bailey, please give me an explanation. Lan Jingquang put on a fake smile. From the moment Bailey Hongzhuang stepped into the Lan family, Bailey Hongzhuang's life was already in their hands. For Lan Qingyan, Bailey Hongzhuang must die. Bailey Hongzhuang, although we had a conflict during the Battle of Zhuolu, your methods are too despicable. You tortured me for 3 whole months. Do you want to torture me to death? Slap. Lan Qingyan threw down her chopsticks and stood up, looking aggressively at Bailey Hongzhuang. This was not the Battle of Zhuolu. Bailey Hongzhuang did not have that many helpers. On the contrary, everyone here was Lan Qingyan's helpers. Chapter 2664. After Lan Qingyan stood up, The elders of Lan Jingquang's faction also stood up one by one, their eyes unkind as they looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. In fact, after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's unusually familiar face, they had a bad premonition. It would be best if they could take advantage of this opportunity to solve it. Seeing this, Bewitching and Mo Yunjue also stood guard beside Bailey Hongzhuang. The Lan family is really arrogant. We were invited here, but you put on such an attitude. This is really too much. Bewitching's deep and handsome eyes were filled with haze. The yuan power in his body surged at that moment, telling everyone in the Lan family that if they dared to make a move, he would not be an idiot. Young Sect Master D, we are now questioning young Palace Master Bailey. We hope you will not interfere. Lan Jingquang looked straight at Bewitching. He admired Bewitching very much. If he could become a couple with Qing Yan, it would be a beautiful story. Master Quang is threatening my wife. And now you want me to not interfere? Isn't this too ridiculous? Bewitching sneered, his eyes becoming colder and colder. I'll say it right here. Whoever dares to touch my wife, I will not let them off. As soon as he said this, Bewitching's cold gaze swept across everyone present. His aura was threatening. Lan Qingyan's pupils shrank. These words were like a needle that fiercely pierced her heart. Bewitching was protecting Bailey Hongzhuang. Master Quang, although we are in your Lan family's territory, we are not at your mercy. Don't tell me you think we're just a few ordinary juniors. Mo Yunjue sneered. The threat in his words could not be more obvious. Mo Yunjue, the person that Bailey Hongzhuang likes isn't you, yet you're still doing so much for her. Don't you think it's stupid? Lan Qingyan frowned and looked at Mo Yunjue with a puzzled expression. It was one thing for Bewitching to protect Bailey Hongzhuang, but what about Mo Yunjue? Hearing this, Mo Yunjue laughed mockingly, his voice filled with ridicule and disdain. What I, Mo Yunjue, want to do is not up to others to tell me what to do. If I don't protect Hongzhuang, am I supposed to protect trash like you? Mo Yunjue did not try to hide the disgust and disdain in his eyes. Although there were many women in this world, most of them were ordinary women. For a woman like Lan Qingyan, he would rather live in the dark. Lan Qingyan's expression froze and her face turned ugly. Mo Yunjue, don't go too far. I advise you to think carefully. If you really take action, your Lan clan may be fine now, but you won't be able to bear the revenge you will face later. Bewitching stared coldly at Lan Jingquang. This man was as ruthless as they knew. If a conspiracy didn't work, then they would use an overt scheme. They came this time because they had nothing to fear. Seeing Bewitching and Mo Yunjue's resolute attitude, Lan Jingquang's eyes flashed with a touch of complexity. If it was only Limitless Palace, then it was nothing. However, if Tiangang Sect and Shitian Pavilion were added, then it would be a big problem. Speaking of which, they underestimated Bailey Hongzhuang's charm. Seeing that the atmosphere had changed again, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed, and her lips curved into a mocking smile. But the words that came out of her mouth made everyone present stunned again. Chapter 2665. Her cold words were filled with indifference and disgust, but they were powerful and resonating. Lan Jingquang and the rest of the Lan family were stunned. Lan Qingyan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment. She didn't understand why Bailey Hongzhuang would say such a thing. Yu Siqing also raised her head, unable to conceal the shock on her face. Could it be that her judgment was correct? Was this girl really Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's daughter? But judging from Lan Yishuan's situation, she had no chance of surviving. She could have ended Lan Yishuan's life, but she preferred to see Mu Lingbing, and the rest unable to seek help, and watch her daughter slowly die. Only then would the pain be maximized. Lan Borong's eyes flashed with disbelief. Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly mentioning Lan Yunxiao at a time like this couldn't be a coincidence. Lan Jingquang's face darkened. His malicious eyes flashed with hesitation as he asked in a low voice, "What do you mean by that?" The Lan family's ability to bully others is indeed well-deserved. Back then, after Master Quang did those inhumane things, was this how he treated Lan Yunxiao with the elders of the Lan family with a hypocritical face? No wonder you couldn't sit on the house head seat. If someone like you really became the house head, the entire Lan family would become a dark power, wouldn't it? Bailey Hongzhuang's lips hooked up in an enchanting and mocking smile. Her originally elegant and refined appearance suddenly revealed a strange flirtatious charm. However, her words were like a knife that ruthlessly stabbed into Lan Jingquang's heart. His expression instantly darkened, and his eyes were terrifyingly cold. Lan Jingquang only felt that these words were incomparably familiar. It was just like how Lan Hongtai had refused to let him become the next house head. This was almost the same content, but it was also the truth he was most unwilling to accept. The expressions of all the Lan clan elders froze, revealing a bit of awkwardness and anger from embarrassment. What happened back then was beyond all of their expectations. But in order to protect the Rainbow Divine Pearl from losing its effect, they had no other choice. Unfortunately, no matter how much they emphasized this reason, the scene of all of them joining hands to stop Lan Yunxiao back then was a real one. They still remembered Lan Yunxiao's grief and indignation at that time. He was such a person who loved the Lan family, but in the end, he had no choice but to pick up a weapon and attack them. Masses of Lan family members collapsed. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were covered in blood as they glared at Lan Jingquang and the others, who were being protected by the elders. It was an indescribable pain and unwillingness, betrayal and hatred that came from the depths of his heart. "You crazy girl who doesn't know any etiquette. What nonsense are you talking about?" Lan Jingquang raised his right hand, and a gust of wind blasted towards Bailey Hongzhuang. The airwave blew up Bailey Hongzhuang's hair. Just as it was about to fall on Bailey Hongzhuang's body, Bewitching suddenly made his move. With a light wave, the airwave disappeared without a trace. However, Bewitching's expression turned even colder. Angry out of humiliation, Bailey Hongzhuang looked mockingly at Lan Jingquang and sneered. "Now that Lan Qingyan wants to use the same method to deal with me, I'm afraid it won't work." Chapter 2666. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Her cold and indifferent words had an invisible killing power that tore apart the disguise of Lan Borong and the others, revealing their bloody wounds. To the elders in Lan Jingquang's faction, this was a past they didn't want to recall. But to Lan Borong and the others, this was the greatest pain in their hearts. "What does my Lan family's matters have to do with you? If you continue to shoot your mouth off like this, don't blame us for being impolite." Lan Kaicheng could no longer maintain his face. That matter back then was a huge conspiracy, and he had also participated in it. But since he had already done it, he wouldn't regret it. However, if this matter was brought to the table, it would be too shameful. "Impolite?" Bailey Hongzhuang sneered. "Didn't Master Kuang already become impolite to me?" In the next instant, Bailey Hongzhuang fiercely slammed her palm on the table in front of her. "Pa!" A muffled sound rang out. Following that, the entire table was split into pieces, and the fragments flew everywhere. The wine and dishes on the table fell to the ground with a loud bang, producing a crisp sound. "I'm not Lan Yunxiao, who was forced by you all in the past. I won't accept such a huge accusation of putting Lan Qingyan to death on my head." Bailey Hongzhuang's deep phoenix eyes blossomed with a dazzling brilliance. A tyrannical and unparalleled aura erupted from her body, as if she was born in a superior position. That powerful aura caused the entire hall to stagnate. Silence. The entire hall fell into silence in an instant. Everyone was shocked as they looked at the woman in front of them with a threatening aura. Even when she was bristling with anger, her peerless elegance still emitted an astonishing beauty that caused people's hearts to tremble. Lan Qingyan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in disbelief. It was hard to imagine that Bailey Hongzhuang, who was younger than her, could release such power. Chapter 2667. After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Yu Siqing, who was originally watching the show from the side, suddenly had a bad premonition. Only she knew about the detoxification, and she was confident that she could deceive everyone. However, in front of Bailey Hongzhuang the poisoner, it would not be easy to hide all of this. "Didn't you want to torture me in every possible way? That's why you poisoned me." Lan Qingyan's face was malevolent as she relentlessly accused Bailey Hongzhuang. She would not believe the latter's nonsense. Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to torture her to death. When she thought of that terrifying pain, she still felt her hair stand on end. I did torture you, but I didn't want your life, did I? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows and retorted. If I really wanted your life, could it be that the you standing in front of me right now is a ghost? Lan Qingyan's face was covered with haze, and her body couldn't help but tremble because of anger. She didn't think that Bailey Hongzhuang would be so shameless. Things had already reached this point, and she still wanted to deny it. It really made her speechless. If it wasn't for my great-aunt saving me, I would already be dead. You vicious and merciless snake woman. Even if we had conflicts during the Battle of Zhuolu, your methods are too sinister. Faced with Lan Qingyan's continuous questioning, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips were still rippling with a faint smile, as if she wasn't the one being blamed. Lan Qingyan, you and I had conflicts before. I also know that you like to randomly accuse others. However, isn't it a bit ridiculous for you to frame me like this? Bailey Hongzhuang coldly looked at everyone from the Lan family present, and her cold voice suddenly increased in volume. I, Bailey Hongzhuang, have always been a person who dares to take responsibility for my actions. Since I've done it, I'm not afraid to admit it. However, if you want to frame me, that's absolutely impossible. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze turned and her shocking gaze directly shot towards Lan Qingyan. The poison I gave you was only to make you suffer for 3 months. After 3 months, this effect will automatically dissipate. If it wasn't for this, do you really think you can live until now? Once these words were spoken, everyone from the Lan family present was stunned. They looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment and wondered if they had heard wrongly. However, everyone's expression was the same, so they naturally couldn't have heard wrongly. What do you mean by this? Lan Rong frowned, Lan Qingyan and Lan Qingyan. Previously, he didn't speak because he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang's actions were indeed a bit too much. However, if all of this was slander, then the ones who had gone overboard would be Lan Qingyan and the others. They're Lan Qingyans for Zhuolu. S. My wife has long understood the effects of this poison. With everything that young Lord Lan had done, so what if my wife vented her anger? As long as she didn't take your life on the spot, this is already very merciful. Bewitching coldly opened his mouth, his incomparably handsome face full of biting coldness. My poison was clearly cured by my grandaunt. Lan Qingyan emphasized. She didn't think that Bailey Hongzhuang would go against her conscience and say such words. It was clearly Yu Siqing who cured her poison. Otherwise, her soul would have already returned to the 9th heaven. Young Lord Lan, hearing you say this is a bit funny. Chapter 2668. Could it be? Young Palace Master Bailey knows the art of foresight and can predict when young Palace Master Lan's great-aunt will cure you? Mo Yunjue's lips curled into a sneer. His light words were full of sarcasm. You're all in cahoots. Naturally, you're speaking up for Bailey Hongzhuang. Don't treat us like fools. Lan Qingyan didn't believe it at all. She only felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two were in cahoots. If she really believed it, then she would be a fool. What's the truth? Why don't you just confront them face to face? Bewitching said coldly. Hearing this, Lan Jingquang and the others couldn't help but look at Yu Siqing. With one glance, Lan Jingquang saw the worry and awkwardness in Yu Siqing's eyes. Thump. Lan Jingquang's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang was telling the truth? Great Master Yu Siqing, since they refused to admit it, then I'll have to trouble you to confront them. Lan Kaiqing immediately said. Today's feast at Hongmen, they had properly prepared. How could they let Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two refuse to admit it and get away with it? Hearing that, although Yu Siqing felt a little guilty, she could only stand up and force herself to confront him. Qingyan's poison was cured by me. What's the problem? Yu Siqing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a cold gaze. The aura of a great master also lingered. With Yu Siqing's experience, how could she not be compared to Bailey Hongzhuang, a girl who had just stepped out of the house? Hee. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. I've heard of great master Yu Siqing's name before, but I never thought that after seeing it today. Your shamelessness is really amazing. You little girl, what nonsense are you talking about? Yu Siqing was furious. Her origin energy turned into flying blades and attacked Bailey Hongzhuang. She, Yu Siqing, had been respected in the Shengxian continent for so many years, but never had a junior dared to insult her to her face. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her hand and blocked Yu Siqing's flying blade. At the same time, she also threw a flying blade back. A strand of black hair fell to the ground as Yu Siqing's face darkened even further. Her malicious and venomous eyes were terrifying to the extreme. Do you think that only you can attack me and I can't retaliate? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were fierce, facing Yu Siqing's cold eyes without the slightest fear. According to what I know, the Yu clan has suffered a huge calamity, so the entire Yu clan has already moved to the Blue Sun City's sphere of influence. You must have been forced by the situation, so you took all the credit for yourself, right? His deep phoenix eyes flickered with a sharp cold light, penetrating the bottom of Yu Siqing's heart. In front of Bailey Hongzhuang's sharp eyes, Yu Siqing was surprised to find that she had a feeling of being seen through. How could such a young girl do this? If it were any other day, I wouldn't care about what you've done. But since you've hurt my reputation, I can't just sit by and watch. I don't believe that you can't cure the poison in 3 months. How can you cure it at this critical moment? Then, isn't this too much of a coincidence? Faced with Bailey Hongzhuang's aggressive questioning, even Yu Siqing was at a loss for words. Chapter 2669. After seeing Yu Siqing's performance, Lan Qingyan and the rest, who were originally full of confidence, couldn't help but change their expressions. Bailey Hongzhuang's performance was too confident. On the contrary, Yu Siqing appeared to be a little guilty. If this poison was really cured by Yu Siqing, logically speaking, Yu Siqing shouldn't be so guilty. In reality, regarding the sudden cure of the poison, Lan Qingyan and Lan Jingquang had some doubts in their hearts. Previously, Yu Siqing had always acted as if she couldn't do anything about this poison. They had even lost all hope. However, at this time, Yu Siqing had suddenly cured Lan Qingyan of the poison. Without any warning, it was just that sudden. Although they felt it was very strange at the time, they couldn't think of any other reason other than Yu Siqing's explanation, and didn't think much about it. However, after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, they couldn't help but start to question it. If Yu Siqing could really cure Lan Qingyan of the poison, she should have been immensely proud of herself. How could she have done it so quietly? However, in this situation, they would rather believe that Yu Siqing was telling the truth than Bailey Hongzhuang. So what if it's a coincidence? There are so many coincidences in this world. Everything is just a coincidence. Yu Siqing stared coldly at Bailey Hongzhuang. She had already made up her mind. No matter what, she was the one who cured this poison. As long as she didn't admit it, Bailey Hongzhuang wouldn't be able to prove her innocence. With Yu Siqing's reputation in the Shengxian continent, it was needless to say that everyone would believe her. Seeing Yu Siqing's confidence, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled. Since that's the case, I have a very simple way to prove who's right. I wonder if you dare to give it a try. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's confident look, Yu Siqing had a bad feeling in her heart. However, the arrow was already knocked on the bow. If she hesitated, she would also lose. Speak. Unfortunately, I have an identical poison here. I can find anyone to consume it now. Since you can detoxify the poison, why don't you detoxify it again? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Yu Siqing mockingly. From the fact that Yu Siqing was unable to detoxify the poison within 3 months, she had already concluded that Yu Siqing was unable to detoxify the poison. She came here today to confront the Lan family. And on the other hand, she didn't mind giving Yu Siqing a tight slap. Looking at Yu Siqing's face that had turned the color of pig liver, Bailey Hongzhuang found it funny. Yu Siqing had thought highly of herself for so many years. This slap was probably enough to make Yu Siqing suffer. Yu Siqing didn't know how to react to Bailey Hongzhuang's suggestion. She thought that Bailey Hongzhuang had gotten the poison by chance. She didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang not only knew the effects of this poison, but also had the same poison. As a result, she was now riding a tiger and unable to get off. Because of Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the originally aggressive Yu Siqing had turned into a mute. Even the stupidest people present understood the situation. The result is already very clear. I believe that I don't need to say anything more, right? Chapter 2670. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, the faces of Lan Jingquang and the others became a bit awkward. Originally, they were full of confidence, but now, they were being checkmated. However, this was something that they had never thought of. In a moment, everyone looked at Yu Siqing with disgust. Who would have thought that Yu Siqing would do such a thing to take all the credit for herself? In these 2 days, Yu Siqing had been acting extremely arrogant, as if she was the benefactor of the Lan family. However, all of this was fake, and Yu Siqing was enjoying it with a clear conscience. She was too shameless. Lan Jingquang's face was as gloomy as water. He looked at Yu Siqing with eyes filled with anger. If it was only the Lan family who found out, then so be it. However, she was exposed in front of everyone. Even if they didn't know, in the eyes of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, they would think that they were in cahoots. This was no different from bringing shame to the entire Lan family. Yu Siqing naturally knew that being exposed like this was extremely shameful. She also didn't think that there would be a day when she would be exposed. This Bailey Hongzhuang was young, but her words and actions were watertight. It seemed that the other party came prepared. Perhaps, when she said that she was the one who cured Lan Qingyan, this Bailey Hongzhuang already had a plan. However, looking at the magnificent Bailey Hongzhuang in front of her, Yu Siqing felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity, as if she had seen her somewhere before. This figure was vaguely familiar, but she couldn't remember when she had seen it before. But she couldn't deny that she, Yu Siqing, had fallen into a trap today. The 3 of us came from afar as guests of the Lan family. We didn't think that the Lan family would frame us. If you don't welcome us, just say so. Why do you have to do such a thing? Bewitching curved his sexy lips. His handsome face was bloodthirsty and stern. It was clearly a rhetorical question, but one could hear the threat and anger in it. If it were just 3 ordinary young people, Lan Jingquang and the others could ignore them. However, these 3 people's identities couldn't be underestimated. If they didn't do something right, the Lan family would suffer unbearable revenge. Even if your poison didn't kill me, the pain I've suffered for the past 3 months was caused by you. Isn't that too much? Lan Qingyan glared at Bailey Hongzhuang. In such a short period of time, she had cast all of this aside. To her, these 3 months of pain was the most unbearable. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled, her phoenix eyes slightly raised, a bright light blooming in her eyes. Her voice instantly became cold and low. Lan Qingyan, you haven't been living in your dreams since you were young? Everyone knew that it was normal to lose one's life in the Battle of Zhuolu. If I had fallen into your hands, I would have been dead by now. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame yourself for not having the ability. The fact that I didn't kill you with my poison is already giving face to the Lan family. Even if I had poisoned you, what can you do now? If the entire Lan family only uses this reason to question me, once this news gets out, it will be a laughingstock. Chapter 2671. Bailey Hongzhuang's words were like cannonballs exploding, and Lan Qingyan's originally aggressive attitude gradually turned into a guilty conscience. Because what Bailey Hongzhuang said was the basic rule of the Shengxian continent. Many cultivators had died in the Battle of Zhuolu. If Bailey Hongzhuang had killed her in the Battle of Zhuolu, the Lan family could only find another reason to pursue the matter. The problem was, would Limitless Palace, who was also a first-rate power, be afraid? Bailey Hongzhuang didn't poison her, and only tortured her. As long as this news spread out, reason would be on Bailey Hongzhuang's side. Their Lan family was in the wrong. Lan Qingyan's red lips parted slightly, as if someone had grabbed her throat. But she couldn't say a single word. I don't care if you really didn't know, but you slandered me. This is the truth. The illustrious Lan family. Don't tell me you don't want to admit it just because you have more people? Bailey Hongzhuang crossed her arms in front of her chest, and calmly looked at the Lan family's upper echelons. She had the aura of someone who wouldn't panic, even if MT Tai collapsed in front of her. Bewitching and Mo Yunjue stood beside Bailey Hongzhuang without saying a word. Just their actions showed their attitude. This time, the Lan family was in the wrong. If they didn't apologize, they wouldn't let this matter go. Seeing this, Lan Kaiqing and the other elders couldn't help but look at Lan Jingquang. This matter was completely led by Lan Jingquang. Now that things had developed to this point, it was completely out of their expectations. As for what to do, it was up to Lan Jingquang to decide. Lan Jingquang's head drooped slightly, his face as gloomy as water. That shadow covered his eyes, making it impossible for others to see through his thoughts. He originally wanted to use this feast of hangmen to dampen Bailey Hongzhuang's momentum. He didn't expect to go for wool and come home shorn. Now Bailey Hongzhuang had a handle on him. If they apologized, the Lan family would undoubtedly lose face. However, this wasn't what he cared about the most. What he was most concerned about was how terrifying Bailey Hongzhuang's mind was. Logically speaking, under the circumstances of the Battle of Zhualu, Bailey Hongzhuang should have poisoned him. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not do so. She seemed to have expected this day. It was precisely because of this that she was so fearless when she came to the Lan clan alone. This was because Bailey Hongzhuang had already thought of a way to deal with all the moves they had prepared. According to his understanding, this Bailey Hongzhuang had just become the young palace master of Limitless Palace. However, in the face of their Lan family's battle array, Bailey Hongzhuang remained calm and composed. This temperament alone was enough to prove her extraordinariness. Comparing the two, it was not strange that Lan Qingyan was defeated by her. Faced with that face that was so similar to Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing, Lan Jingquang couldn't help but feel a strong sense of dissatisfaction. This feeling was just like when he was pressed down by Lan Yunxiao. He lost again. We didn't investigate this matter clearly. I apologize to young Palace Master Bailey. Please forgive us. Lan Jingquang abruptly raised his head. That feminine and handsome face was filled with a faint smile, as if the previous hostility had never occurred. Seeing the speed at which Lan Jingquang's expression changed, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but sneer. Chapter 2672. However, this kind of apology wasn't what Bailey Hongzhuang wanted. Since Master Kuang is apologizing to me, I naturally have to accept it. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly, but suddenly changed the topic. However, just now, almost everyone present was making things difficult for me. Now that I'm apologizing, it's Master Kuang's fault. Isn't this a bit wrong? Once these words were spoken, Lan Kaiqing and the other elders couldn't help but glare at Bailey Hongzhuang angrily. Bailey Hongzhuang's meaning was very clear. She didn't want Lan Jingquang's apology alone, but the entire Lan family's apology. Little girl, leave a way out for everything. Don't go overboard. I'm afraid it won't end well in the future. Lan Kaiqing's eyes were cold and full of threat. Lan Jingquang's apology had already disgraced the entire Lan family. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was still being overbearing. If all the elders were to apologize to Bailey Hongzhuang together, it would be a joke. Second elder's words are really interesting. Why don't I return the same words to you? At that time, I left a way out for Lan Qingyan, but it caused all of you to gang up on her. Speaking of which, leaving a way out doesn't seem to be a good thing? Bailey Hongzhuang's expression didn't change. Her words were extremely resolute, but her face still had a trace of a gentle and moving smile. And it was this kind of expression that made Lan Kaiqing and the others even more unhappy. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Lan Kaiqing's old face stiffened. He only felt that the other party had ruthlessly slapped his face, making him extremely embarrassed. To think that I've always respected the Lan family, and thought that the Lan family's actions were open-minded. Now it seems that the Lan family is only SOSO. They're not even willing to apologize when they're in the wrong. Forget it. Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand. Her face revealed deep disappointment, as if she didn't have any expectations for the Lan family. However, Lan Jingquang and the others couldn't help but secretly curse in their hearts. Respect the Lan family? If these words were said by the successors of other forces, they would still believe it. However, these words were said by Limitless Palace's people. It was as fake as it could be. When the Lan family expressed goodwill to Limitless Palace ignored them. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang kept saying that she respected the Lan family, she didn't need to say the opposite words, right? But now that Bailey Hongzhuang had said it, they could only endure their disgust, unable to refute. Otherwise, they couldn't say that Limitless Palace didn't respect of the Lan family. Wasn't this also slap their own face? Of Palace limitless of limitless to say, limitless? Looking at the indifferent and wanton Bailey Hongzhuang, Lan Qingyan only felt that Bailey Hongzhuang had suddenly become incomparably dazzling. This kind of situation, Bailey Hongzhuang actually reversed it just like that. And now her father, who had always been a strategist in her eyes, actually apologized to Bailey Hongzhuang. This kind of contrast caused an indescribable jealousy to rise in her heart. Based on what? All these unsolvable problems were easily solved in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Beichen Yunjue, let's go. Bailey Hongzhuang took a step forward. Her face was still filled with disappointment and helplessness towards the Lan family. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's retreating appearance, Lan Kaicheng and the others gnashed their teeth in anger. If they let Bailey Hongzhuang leave like this, wouldn't Bailey Hongzhuang do whatever she wanted? Chapter 2673. Young Palace Master Bailey. It's true that our Lan family didn't investigate thoroughly and caused a misunderstanding. I apologize on behalf of the entire Lan family. I hope you won't take it to heart. At this moment, Lan Borong spoke up. He wasn't as angry as Lan Kaicheng and the others. On the contrary, he only had admiration and respect for Bailey Hongzhuang. Her boldness was truly similar to Lan Yunxiao's style in the past. Regardless of whether Bailey Hongzhuang was Lan Yishuan or not, in the face of such an excellent junior, he really appreciated her. Oh! Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang stopped and looked at Lan Kaicheng and the others. The outcome was set. Although Lan Kaicheng and the others gritted their teeth, they could only lower their heads and admit their mistakes. They had made the wrong move. We're truly sorry. Everyone spoke up. The smile on Bailey Hongzhuang's lips gradually widened. Looking at the unwilling but forced faces in front of her, she only felt a burst of happiness. This was the interest she took back first. It wasn't time for them to apologize yet. Since that's the case, I won't take it to heart. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly and sat down again. I spilled my food and wine just now. I'm afraid I'll have to trouble someone to prepare it for me again. Lan Kaicheng and the others couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood when they heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words. Now that things had developed to this point, could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang was still planning to continue eating? However, judging from Bailey Hongzhuang's attitude, she clearly planned to do so. Lan Jingquang's expression was extremely gloomy. However, the initiative was now in Bailey Hongzhuang's hands. Even though he was extremely angry, he could only forcefully restrain himself. Next, Bailey Hongzhuang's face was full of smiles as she looked at the beautiful women in front of her. Lan Jingquang, Lan Qingyan, and the elders all had ashen faces. They wanted to leave but couldn't, so they could only awkwardly accompany her. Bewitching and Mo Yunjue both gave Bailey Hongzhuang a thumbs up. What a slap to the face! Lan Qingyan stared at the smiling face opposite her. Her fingernails were already deeply embedded in her palms, dripping with blood, but she did not feel it in the slightest. An indescribable hatred filled her heart. She never thought that she would fall into the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang again today. Yu Xiqing was undoubtedly the most awkward person present. The change in the situation was entirely caused by her. At this moment she couldn't sit still. If she had known this would happen, she wouldn't have come today. She could feel the malicious and resentful gazes of Lan Jingquang and the other elders of the Lan family. It was obvious that everyone had already pinned this debt on her head. As a result, her status in the Lan family would definitely plummet. This situation she couldn't imagine. After eating and drinking to their heart's content, Bailey Hongzhuang, Bewitching, and Mo Yunjue returned to their residence. Faced with the ashen faces of the Lan family, Bailey Hongzhuang felt that it was an unusual appetizer. She ate very comfortably, I'm afraid that many people in the Lan family won't be able to sleep tonight. Mo Yunjua's resolute and cold face suddenly revealed a smile. It was as if an iceberg had melted. It was very charming. Lan Jingquang's face is as black as the bottom of a pot. It's so satisfying to look at. Xiao He couldn't hide the excitement on her face. Master's performance today was so mighty and domineering. Chapter 2674. What a coincidence. If it wasn't for the fact that the Lan clan didn't know about Yu Xiqing's secret, they wouldn't have been caught unprepared by us today. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Even the heavens were helping her this time. Thinking about it, Yu Xiqing had never been so humiliated in all these years. Di Beichen's lips curled into an evil smile. In my opinion, Yu Xiqing's current situation is the worst. I'm afraid that the Lan clan will soon find her and denounce her for her crimes. I hope that Yu Xiqing won't leave just like that. Otherwise, the good show in a month's time won't be good without her. Bailey Hongzhuang's brows furrowed slightly. Yu Xiqing, Lan Jingquang, and the others had to participate in the good show after this. If any of them were missing, it would be less exciting. Yu Xiqing doesn't dare to leave, Mo Yunjua suddenly said. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at Mo Yunjua at the same time. They didn't know why Mo Yunjua was so sure. Yu Xiqing always thought that the Yu clan's revenge was directed at her, so she had no choice but to stay in the clan. Only this way can the risk be minimized. Otherwise, with Yu Xiqing's personality, she would have left long ago. She wouldn't stay here and be bullied. Mo Yunjua, as the young master of the heaven-devouring pavilion, was very familiar with such news. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't write on any of their rooms, but she wrote on Yu Xiqing's room. Furthermore, Bailey Hongzhuang's poison was something that Yu Xiqing couldn't detoxify. Therefore Yu Xiqing was afraid. Indeed, with Yu Xiqing's reputation, she could choose to go to any power, and wouldn't be treated badly. It's just that many people think that the Yu clan's heavy losses have a lot to do with Yu Xiqing. This is why no one has extended an olive branch to Yu Xiqing. This time, Yu Xiqing is really at her wit's end. Di Beichen immediately understood everything. Before Yu Xiqing could figure out who her opponent was, she could only swallow her anger. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two looked at each other, and then their faces all smiled. Lan Jingquang went to Yu Xiqing's residence as soon as the banquet ended. Recently, Yu Xiqing had been treating Lan Qingyan's poison. Therefore, Yu Xiqing had been living in the Lan clan, and didn't stay with the Yu clan members. This was what Yu Xiqing's own, and Yu's use. When Lan Jingquang went to find Yu Xiqing, Lan Qingyan followed closely behind. Ever since her attitude changed, Lan Jingquang no longer hid anything from her. Although this incident was related to Lan Qingyan, it was ultimately Yu Xiqing's fault. After all, back then, Lan Qingyan had already been tormented by the pain until she was in a daze. She had no idea what had happened. Yu Xiqing knew that Lan Jingquang would definitely come to denounce her. Therefore she waited in the room. She didn't think that there would be a day when the matter would be exposed. However, since things had come to this, she could only take one step at a time. Yu Manlan also rushed over when she heard the news. Although this matter had caused the Lan family to lose face, it was still very easy for her to know the details of the process with her status. Chapter 2675. Yu Manlan's feelings were the most complicated. Although she had been married to the Lan family for so many years, her surname was Yu. As her aunt, Yu Xiqing had done something wrong. She would inevitably be implicated and labeled as well. Moreover, this time, Yu Xiqing and the others had followed her to the Lan residence. This point had already made the Lan family very dissatisfied. However, because Yu Xiqing had cured Lan Qingyan, the situation had eased a little. She didn't expect that such news would come out today, causing the Lan family's elders to lose face in front of Limitless Palace. This was even more serious. The Lan family and Limitless Palace had always been at odds. Lan Qingyan and Bailey Hongzhuang had a deep grudge against each other. Originally, they wanted to use this opportunity to display their Lan family's strength in front of Limitless Palace. Who would have thought that they would completely lose face now? Therefore, Yu Manlan was extremely depressed at this moment. If possible, she really didn't want to have any connection with Yu Siqing. Unfortunately, this was destined to be impossible. Faced with Yu Manlan's accusation, Yu Siqing coldly glanced at her. Her voice was full of displeasure and anger. If it weren't for the fact that your niece was useless, and that the people from the family couldn't help her, why would I do such a thing? Yu Siqing didn't hide her disgust. Yu Manlan didn't have any outstanding talent since she was young. After marrying into the Lan family, she was suppressed by Mu Lingbing everywhere. Coincidentally, she and Mu Lingbing had a grudge against each other, so she helped Yu Manlan deal with Lan Yunxiao and the others. If it wasn't for this, what position would Yu Manlan have in the Lan family now? However, this niece of his was completely biased towards an outsider. Once something happened, Yu Manlan only thought of protecting herself and completely forgot about her previous kindness. How could she not be disgusted? Yu Manlan couldn't help but be stunned. She didn't expect Yu Siqing to push all the blame onto her after doing something wrong. "Aunt, how can you say that? If I didn't help, I'm afraid you wouldn't even have a place to stay now." Yu Manlan was also angered by Yu Siqing's words. From the beginning to the end, everything was out of her control. Now that things had developed to this point, Yu Siqing actually pushed all the problems onto her. She was simply too hateful. Hearing this, Yu Siqing sneered. "Even without you, the Lan family would still allow us to stay. You, on the other hand, have been in the Lan family for so many years. The family has helped you for so long, but when you encounter a problem, you act as if you're not involved. The clan has really raised an ingrate." Ingrate? Hearing these words, Yu Manlan's face couldn't help but turn ashen. Because of the Yu clan's matter, her current situation in the Lan clan was already very awkward. She didn't expect that she would even be labeled as an ingrate. She was simply angered to death. Yu Manlan was so angry that her entire body trembled, but she didn't know what to say. Her personality had always been like this, and it was hard for her to hide this side of her. "Useless thing," Yu Siqing cursed. Fortunately, Yu Manlan wasn't her daughter, or she would have killed her with her own hands. After so many years, even without Mu Lingbing's existence, Yu Manlan was still a dispensable existence in the Lan clan. Chapter 2676. At this moment, Lan Jingquang and Lan Qingyan arrived at Yu Siqing's residence. The two of them immediately saw Yu Manlan's slightly red eyes. However, at this moment, the two of them clearly weren't in the mood to care about Yu Manlan's emotions. Yu Manlan was also inextricably linked to these troubles. "Aunt, I'm sure you're well aware of what happened today. You've humiliated the entire clan by hiding it from us like this." Lan Jingquang's face was gloomy. Ever since the incident at the banquet, his face had never looked good. As the initiator of this banquet, he had to be responsible for the entire family. Now, it was his suggestion that had caused his family to suffer such humiliation. He had to give an explanation. Facing Lan Jingquang, Yu Siqing did not have her arrogant attitude. "Now that things have come to this, I don't need to explain the process. What do you plan to do?" Yu Siqing was very calm. Today, she had been exposed in front of so many people. There was no point in denying it. What she needed to do next was to deal with this matter. Lan Jingquang, who was originally extremely angry, sighed in his heart when he saw Yu Siqing's calm attitude. Indeed, there was no point in complaining now. He had already guessed the reason why Yu Siqing did this the moment he found out the truth. If not for Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance, Yu Siqing's actions would not have been discovered. "I have to give the family an explanation for this matter. Aunt, I'm afraid you will have to return to the Yu family's residence during this period. It's best not to appear in front of the Lan family members. This is good for both you and us." Hearing this, Yu Siqing could not help but sigh in relief. This situation was much better than she had imagined. She had already thought it through. If Lan Jingquang dared to punish her too much, then she would break the pot and cause a life-and-death struggle. Lan Jingquang and the others' current status was inseparable from her help. If they dared to burn the bridge after crossing the river, then she did not mind destroying them as well. All right. Lan Jingquang's thoughts were very deep. Just by looking at Yu Siqing's attitude towards Yu Manlan, he had already guessed Yu Siqing's thoughts. The moment he dared to speak up to expel Yu Siqing, with Yu Siqing's ruthless personality, she would definitely not let them off. Compared to Lan Yunxiao's matter being exposed, this situation was still within the scope of what he could handle. At this moment, Lan Jingquang was at a loss for words. This matter could only be resolved by himself. Recently, the troubles came one after another. After hearing Lan Jingquang's words, Lan Qingyan's eyes flashed with disbelief. This matter was completely caused by his aunt. Not only did she make them thank her for a few days in vain, but she also made all of them lose face. However, his father actually gave him such a simple punishment. Wasn't this a little too light? Yu Manlan was also surprised. She didn't know why Lan Jingquang would do this. You two can leave first. I have something to discuss with my aunt. Lan Jingquang glanced at Yu Manlan and Lan Qingyan indifferently. His ashen face did not ease up at all. Chapter 2677. After Yu Manlan and Lan Qingyan left, only Lan Jingquang and Yu Siqing were left in the room. Aunt, Bailey Hongzhuang is really strange today. Didn't you say that the child had no chance of surviving? To Lan Jingquang, nothing else was more important than this. If Bailey Hongzhuang was really Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's daughter, then the situation was different. With such similar faces, even he couldn't believe that they weren't related by blood. What's more, Bailey Hongzhuang had mentioned Lan Yunxiao's matter before, making him feel even more uneasy. 19 years had passed since that incident, and everyone thought that it had ended forever. But now, a person had suddenly appeared and brought up everything again. This was not right. Hearing Lan Jingquang's words, Yu Siqing's gaze deepened. She couldn't help recalling the details of the past. The child was so young and her dantian was destroyed. Indeed, she couldn't have survived. Yu Siqing frowned. She knew that the child couldn't have survived, so she didn't end her life. Because Lan Yixuan had gradually died in Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's arms. That was the most painful thing for them. But this Bailey Hongzhuang is too similar. Could something have happened during the process? Lan Jingquang stared at Yu Siqing. He didn't know anything about medicine, but Yu Siqing was an authority in this field. Yu Siqing muttered to herself for a moment before saying, unless they found a heavenly treasure, Lan Yixuan could have survived. But Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing had already been captured by us, and there's no news of the child. With such a small chance, it shouldn't have been possible for her to survive. Moreover, we've asked Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing all these years. The sorrow in their eyes is definitely not an act. Lan Jingquang didn't care about this and said in a low voice, that means there's still a chance for her to survive. Yu Siqing paused for a moment then nodded. As long as they didn't see Lan Yixuan die with their own eyes, anything could have happened during the process. If that's really the case, then Lan Yixuan's life is too long. Yu Siqing still found it unbelievable. Even an adult wouldn't have been able to survive such serious injuries, let alone a child. Back then, I found it strange that Wuji Palace was so cold to our Lan family's goodwill. If Bailey Hongzhuang is really Lan Yixuan, then everything makes sense. Could it be that she knew the truth? That's why she hated Qingyan, so that's why she poisoned her? Lan Jingquang seemed to have connected all the dots in an instant. Many of the answers that he couldn't answer before could now be explained. Yu Siqing didn't know how to answer to his conjecture. It wasn't a possibility, was a possibility, was a possibility, was a possibility, where was had. Back then, Lan Yixuan's dantian had already been shattered. It was almost impossible for her to repair it. Even if she could repair it, her cultivation speed would definitely be incomparable to before. Chapter 2678. Even if they could connect the dots, they still had to consider objective factors. With all these factors, the probability of Bailey Hongzhuang being Lan Yixuan was less than 1 in 10,000. When we captured Lan Yunxiao and Lan Yixuan, Lan Yixuan wasn't with them. Furthermore, they weren't escaping from a large faction, but an ordinary dynasty. They wouldn't have been able to find any friends to take Lan Yixuan in. Even if Lan Yixuan hadn't died, they would have only placed her in a certain family. Could it be that in such an emergency situation, they would write down Lan Yixuan's background? That's impossible. Yu Siqing shook her head. The probability of such a thing happening was too small. If she were in Mu Lingbing's shoes, she wouldn't have directed her hatred towards the child either. After all, even if a heavily injured child had survived, she wouldn't have been able to take revenge with her insignificant strength. Lan Jingquang's expression turned hesitant when he heard Yu Siqing's words. Everything Yu Siqing had said was the truth. As one of the pursuers, he was well aware of the situation Lan Yunxiao and the others had been in. They had been on the run the entire time, and hadn't had the time to care about anything else. If Bailey Hongzhuang really was Lan Yixuan, she would have come to cause a ruckus a long time ago. Why hadn't she done anything for so many years? There were too many questions and Lan Jingquang couldn't come up with a definite answer. If Bailey Hongzhuang isn't Lan Yixuan, then how do we explain her appearance? Lan Jingquang frowned. Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance today had given him a huge shock. Things that he had chosen to gradually forget had now appeared in front of him in an instant. He was a little flustered. Yu Siqing shook her head. I don't know either. Perhaps it's just a coincidence. However, when she said the word coincidence, she felt a little guilty. Could there really be such a coincidence in this world? I will immediately send people to investigate this matter. Fortunately, there's still time and a chance to clarify everything. Tomorrow, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others would enter the Divine Ice Pond. In the following month, he would do his best to investigate Bailey Hongzhuang's true identity. If Bailey Hongzhuang really was Lan Yixuan, then he would take Bailey Hongzhuang's life as soon as possible. This woman couldn't be left alive. In fact, when he first learned that Bailey Hongzhuang had the inheritance of the seven-colored god pearl in her body, he was also very nervous. In the history of the Lan family's history, Lan Yixuan's inheritors and Lan Yixuan's Yun's inheritors. That was why he was so eager to destroy Bailey Hongzhuang. Once Bailey Hongzhuang grew up, he would forever be suppressed by Lan Yunxiao, never to be able to rise again. Lan lands of Lan Union's Lan. Even if Lan Qingyan wasn't the true inheritor of the Rainbow Pearl, her cultivation speed was still very shocking. Sometimes he would think that if Lan Qingyan had such talent, then as the inheritor, Lan Yixuan, was still alive, how shocking would her achievements be? Chapter 2679. At this moment, Lan Jingquang had already made his decision. Once this news was confirmed, no matter how Bewitching or Mo Yunjua tried to stop him, he would take Bailey Hongzhuang's life within the Lan family's sphere of influence. Otherwise, if Bailey Hongzhuang continued to develop, the consequences would be unimaginable. Aunt, there's something I need to trouble you with. Lan Jingquang gathered his thoughts and looked at Yu Siqing. Speak. Prepare a lethal poison. It must kill her in one strike. Lan Jingquang's voice was cold and gloomy. Coupled with his feminine expression, he was clearly a venomous snake. He definitely wouldn't allow any accidents to ruin his plans. He would eliminate all obstacles one by one. Yu Siqing looked deeply at Lan Jingquang. She already knew of Lan Jingquang's plan. However, this was also why she admired Lan Jingquang. Once he made a move, he would show no mercy. Just like when he dealt with her own brother's family, she never saw any struggle or fluctuation of humanity in his eyes. All right. Lan Jingquang's expression softened. He smiled and said, Aunt, I'll have to trouble you to stay there for the next few days. If there's anything you need, just tell Manlan. I'll definitely prepare it for you. I was indeed in the wrong this time. This is what I should do. At this moment, smiles appeared on the faces of the two equally ruthless people. After leaving Yu Siqing's room, Lan Jingquang's expression darkened. Today, Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance had shocked all the elders of the Lan family. If he had such thoughts, the others would naturally have the same thoughts. He could even sense that some of the elders' gazes towards Bailey Hongzhuang had changed. If Bailey Hongzhuang was Lan Yixuan, Then she was a member of the Lan family. Although many people in the family were on his side, there were still many old fellows who still remembered their past relationship. Once they acknowledged Bailey Hongzhuang, he was almost certain that these old fellows would take good care of Bailey Hongzhuang, considering their past debt to Lan Yunxiao. As for Lan Hongtai, he had been looking forward to seeing Lan Yunxiao and the others again. Once he knew about this, he would definitely protect Bailey Hongzhuang. This was all trouble. He had to complete all of this as soon as possible. Unfortunately, Yu Siqing needed some time to concoct the poison. Otherwise, he would have poisoned Bailey Hongzhuang to death. Patriarch, did you see Bailey Hongzhuang today? Lan Borong arrived at the residence of the Patriarch. He knew how much the Patriarch wanted to see Bailey Hongzhuang with his own eyes. However, Lan Hongtai usually wouldn't attend such a banquet. If he attended today, it would arouse everyone's suspicion. In addition, Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance was extremely similar to Bailey Hongzhuang's, so it was very likely that it would have an adverse effect on her. Lan Hongtai nodded. His weathered but dignified face was filled with deep emotion. His deep eyes faintly revealed a trace of trembling and excitement. She must be Yin Zhao's child. From the moment he saw Bailey Hongzhuang, Lan Hongtai had already determined everything. That posture, that expression, and that imposing manner of looking down on the world were too similar. He couldn't be more familiar with the son he doted on the most in his life. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.